Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so following on with our vegetable groups, today I'd like to talk a little bit about alliums. Now, alliums are quite a large group of plants, and they're all sort of bulb sort of based plants. And now, a lot of them are actually grown for their, for their beauty. The flowers are always on a long stem, and they're sort of like a pom-pom at the top, and they're predominantly sort of pinks and purples, some white as well. But the alliums, as far as vegetables are concerned, are effectively the onion family. Now, there are quite a few things in the family. Of course, we've got the onions, we've got leeks, we've got garlic, chives, shallots, scallions. Now, scallions are effectively like spring onions. There's quite a few in that group. We've also got ramp, we've got kelsot, we've got ramson, which is effectively like wild garlic. We've got spring onions, we've got Welsh onions, we've got Newtons, which are basically blue chives, which are a wild variety. And in the UK, alliums grow really well. They really like our sort of weather conditions. So if you do, if you are growing in sort of UK styled weather conditions, it is really well suited to alliums. Also, a lot of the alliums come from all over the world really. Chives, for example, originate in India. They've sort of come over from the sort of the Indian Asian sort of area, and but there's quite a few sort of wild alliums out there, such as the ramp and the ramson, which are effectively types of garlic or types of scallions, which are sort of spring onions. And they're all reasonably taste the same. Obviously, everything. I'd say probably garlic is at one end of the scale, and then at the other end of the scale you've got like onions and things like that. And then basically you've just got the variation between the two. So personally, I would say the taste of leeks and chives and things like that and shallots are kind of halfway between like a standard onion and your sort of garlic, they all kind of sit in that kind of realm. And obviously there are many different types. There are lots of different variations of onions. We've got all the standard sort of onions that we grow during the summer season, which typically go in the spring, and then you harvest them in kind of September or so. And then we've also got what we call Japanese onions, which grow through the winter. So they are quite a hardy plant, and they will grow through the winter months and get themselves established, and then you harvest them a little bit earlier than you would the others. But there is a little bit of an overlap. So why grow the onion family? Well, they are incredibly good for you. From a health benefit, they're very similar to sort of brassicas in their sort of makeup of things that they're really good for. They have got other things in there as well, but they're very similar. They're very high in vitamin C, they're high in vitamin K, the vitamin B6 as well. They're full of folic acid, folate, thiamine, calcium, magnesium, potassium, sulfur. They're very, very strong in sulfur, manganese. So there's all sorts of good things in there, which have a number of sort of health benefits from eating them. So they are in many dating back sort of 1700 BC. It's well sort of documented in the history that humans have been eating onions or of the family, and they are seen as very healthy for cleaning the blood and sort of staying healthy. So what do? From a cardiovascular point of view, they are really good. They protect your heart and your circulation system. They're anti-cancer. There's good properties in there to stop DNA from mutating, which is basically cancer. So onions are really good for that as well. They reduce cholesterol, which is obviously good for your heart and everything. They reduce blood pressure, again very good for your heart. They're anti-clotting, again very good for your heart. So you know, from a blood point of view, onions, garlic, leek and things like that, they're all very good for you. They're also polyphenols and flavonoid quercetin, which are basically anti-inflammatories, which basically stop your joints from inflaming, and you know, all the good properties like that. So there are lots of things in onions, and the best way that you can maximise anything from the onion family is, and a lot of people don't actually do this, but from a health point of view, the best advice I can give you is, whether you're eating chives or garlic or onions or leeks or whatever, any part of the allium family, if you chop or crush the allium up, the garlic or the onion or whatever, and then leave it for 5 minutes chopped up, and you can actually improve this further by adding either lemon juice or vinegar. What this will do is it'll allow the enzymes to release from the onion, and it's also the acid will react with the sulfur molecules in there as well, which will enable those sort of health beneficial parts of the onion to be absorbed into your body as you eat them, and it also makes it taste better as well. So from a culinary point of view, if you want to get the best from your onion or your garlic or your whatever, chop it or crush it before you're going to use it and let it sit for 5 minutes, and then that will allow the enzymes and the sulfur from that to react and come out, so it's you know, it's readily available. Now, alliums are predominantly a biannual plant, which means they grow over a 2-year period. Now, you can grow onions, for example, in 2 different ways. You can either grow sets, which are like these, and these are effectively 1-year-old onions, and all they are small onions, and basically they look very similar to that. So that's basically about as big as you want to go. You don't want to go any bigger than that, because one of the problems with alliums is they do tend to bolt in the 2nd year, in other words, run to seed. So what you want is, you don't want an onion set which is too big, because that will tend to bolt. What you want is a nice firm onion set that doesn't show any kind of mould or anything at the bottom, where the roots are, and then you plant that in the ground, and then that will grow quite nicely and it won't bolt. If you go too big, if you get the really big ones, they have a nasty tendency of bolting. But that's the best bit of advice. So you can grow alliums from either putting sets in like this, which are effectively 1-year-old bulbs, if you like, or you can set the seed. Now, the seed is very small black, looks like mouse poo, to be honest with you, if I'm being absolutely brutally honest with you. That's what it reminds me of. So if you ever see anything like this in your greenhouse or in your shed, there's a good chance you've got mice in there. But this is what the seed looks like. It's black, and it looks like a kind of like a collapsed sphere. So they're like sort of sharp edge. I don't know if you can see that. I don't want to tilt my hand too much, because it'll. But that's what they look like. Little black sort of balls that have kind of sort of collapsed in on themselves, if you like. So that's what basically all onion, leek seeds and everything. They all look the same, also they're the same family. So if you grow onions from seed, you've got almost no chance of them bolting. However, the yield may not be quite as good. Now, having said that, last year my neighbour has the allotment next to me. He grew his onions from seed and had really good, nice size. They were about 4 or 5 inches across. Onions last year. You set them quite early on in the season, and they grow very much like leeks. So these kind of come out like grass or like chives to start with, and then what you want to do is separate them out, plant them into separate modules or separate pots, and then grow them on a little bit longer, and then you plant them out sort of March, April time. I'll come on to the reasons why it's March, April time, or just after April in fact, and then you grow them until September, and then harvest them in September. So let me get on to the reasons why you plant them at that time. So alliums have a number of pests. Unfortunately, over the last couple of decades, the number of pests in the UK have increased. First one is the allium leaf miner. Now, the allium leaf miner didn't exist in the UK before 2002. 2002, which was only kind of 15 years ago, was the first ever sighting of any allium leaf miner and in the UK. Unfortunately, it's spread pretty much all the way through the UK now. And the allium leaf miner is like a small sort of insect beetle, and what it does is it lays its eggs near the onions, and what it'll do is they tend to eat inside the leaves, and the leaves will tend to curl over and flop over. As soon as you've got allium leaf miners in your onions, the only real thing you can do is, as soon as you spot any signs of the leaves curling round or any sort of tracks in the leaves, the best thing to do is pull it out and burn it. Just get rid of it. You can protect against allium leaf miner. Obviously, you can stop the insects getting in there in the first place, and the way to do that is where you've planted your onions. Onions are typically planted in blocks rather than rows, and what you can do is cover that block over with a really tight fleece or very tight net, so the insects can't get through, and that will protect them against it. Unfortunately, the allium leaf miner, as soon as it's in, it doesn't take long for the maggots to eat their way through the onion and then lay more eggs and then become the adult insect and sort of fly off. So and then as soon as they become mature enough, they'll lay eggs again exactly where you've planted your onions. So if you have suffered from it, the best thing to do is take out the onions or the leeks or the garlic or whatever that's been affected, and then don't grow any onions there for a couple of years. Crop rotation obviously helps with this, but as a preventative measure, what you can do is just put your onions in and then make a frame of bamboo or whatever over the top, and then lay some fleece over. And really, you only need to consider 2 parts of the year. You don't need it there all the time. Allium leaf miners, as I say, they have 2 life cycles in a year. So it takes 6 months to grow from a maggot to an adult, and then go and lay eggs and then fly off and die, and then it happens again. So every year you get 2 generations effectively. The first generation, you're at risk between March and April. So that's when you need to cover the area where you've got your onions. And then again, kind of 6 months later, it's actually mid-September to mid-October. And now coming back to the when to plant and when to harvest, that's why I said plant your onions in the ground, or your leeks or whatever, around sort of the end of April, start of May time, and that's when the allium leaf miner will have completed its life cycle. And then grow it between April and mid-September, at which point you should have taken them out of the ground and harvested them. And then that's the second life cycle of the allium leaf miner. So if you can plant in May, grow them all the way through to September, and then harvest them at the early part of September, that will then basically mean that you're between the 2 adult periods of the allium leaf miner, so you shouldn't get any kind of attack. But if you're growing Japanese onions, for example, or you've got a late crop of onions in there, or you've got leeks or whatever, which typically grow through September, October, you typically harvest them in the following spring. You need to cover them basically. So that's the allium leaf miner. As I say, that's only been in the UK since 2002, but it is widespread now. We've basically got it everywhere. I've had it twice. I didn't have it last year. I had it the year before and the year before that in the garden. I've grown them in a different location now. But as soon as they've got to adulthood and they've dropped their eggs into the ground, obviously they will grow again, so you need to grow the alliums, the onions, the leeks or whatever, in a different area of your garden so that they can't sort of get to them. So that's the preventative measure, if you like. But if you do see any of your, if that's the onion, just take this bean as an example. If that's the onion leaf coming out, so you've got the onion at the bottom and you've got the leaf coming out, if the leaf starts to curl and go over like that, that's a really good sign the allium leaf miner is in the leaf. And you can see like little tracks up the leaf. As soon as you see that, pull the onion out and burn it basically. That's the best thing to do. Don't put it in the recycling, burn it, because what you want to do is kill the eggs off and everything. So, because if you put it in the recycling, you then effectively, sort of then spreading it to somewhere else. So the best thing to do is get it in your incinerator and burn them. The next problem that you get is onion fly. Now onion fly is bigger than bigger than the allium leaf miner. The allium leaf miner is very small. The onion fly is actually a fly, smaller than a household fly. They're not so big, but what they do is they lay the eggs round the roots of the allium. So if you've got an onion in the ground like that, obviously the ground level will be like that. The fly will come in and it'll lay its eggs around the bottom, and it'll basically eat away at the roots of the onion. As soon as that happens, obviously the onion can't support itself because it's getting no nutrient from the ground, and you'll start to see the tops flopping over before they should do, really. And really, the only thing again you can do with that is to net over the onion to stop them getting in there in the first place. So again, put some kind of fleece over. But to be honest with you, I've been growing onions all my life, and I've never once had an attack from onion fly. So at least in my area, they're quite unusual. The next one is white rot. This is probably the worst one of all, to be honest with you. White rot affects the roots again. So when I explain to you, when you're looking for your sets with seeds, you don't need to worry too much, because it's unlikely a seed will be affected. But if you buy the sets, what you need to look for is a nice firm set, so it's it's nice and hard. But round the roots, what you want to look for is to see if there's any grey or white fungus growing there. So you need to look at the roots, I don't know if you can see that, and have a look in there if there's any white. Obviously there's not on that one. See if there's any white or grey fungus. Now, the best advice I can give you is always buy your onions or your sets from a reputable supplier. Don't get them sort of off the back of a lorry or whatever, because those are the ones that will be sort of affected. As soon as you've got white rot in the ground, unfortunately, it's there for 16 years. It's kind of like blight. It's a fungus. And as soon as it's got into the ground, it's there for 16 years, and there's really not much you can do about it. The other thing that you really need to look for is if you're on an allotment field like I am here, if somebody gets white rot, it can transfer quite easily, and it'll transfer on your shoes. It sits in the top sort of few inches of the soil. So if you walk on their allotment and then walk on your own, you're spreading the spores everywhere. Tools, it's not typically airborne, however it can be, but it typically comes in on your shoes or your boots, or basically through the soil, or if you're sharing tools, if you've got if somebody borrows your rake or whatever, always make sure before you use it again on your plot that it's been washed, if you suspect that there's any sort of rot or any sort of fungus going about. But white rot is really quite a bad one. It's the one to avoid as far as allium's concerned, because as soon as you've got it, there's not a lot you can do, and basically for 16 years you've got to not grow anything on the allotments allium wise until the spores die out in the ground, because they can live in the ground for 16 years between actually sort of tapping the bud. But they again attack the roots, and you get like a white fungus on there, and the whole onion basically rots. So that's what's called white rot, which is most certainly to be avoided. The next one, which I suffered from last year, and this one tends to be quite unusual, but you get what's called allium rust or blight. And to be honest with you, garlic tends to suffer with this more than any other allium I find. But last year, my onions, basically within a day, the blight went across them, and on the leaves, what you get is like a grey sort of sheen, which is again a fungus. It's like exactly like on the potatoes. It's like a blight that goes across, and it covers the leaf. So you'll have nice sort of green leaves on your onion, and then all of a sudden it'll start to go like a grey colour or even a yellow colour or white, and then the leaves will start to fall over. As soon as you've got it, there's literally nothing you can do. Unfortunately, all you can do, there's nothing wrong with the actual onions themselves. You can pull the onions out of the ground. They won't grow anymore. You can pull the onions out of the ground. You can take off as many of the leaves as you can and burn them, and then dry the rest. And then there's nothing wrong with you eating that onion. They're perfectly good for eating. But as soon as you've got blight, the best thing you can do is take them out. Not only for yourself, and not only because of the spores going into your allotment, But if you've got neighbours that have got onions or any alliums like leeks or garlic or chives or whatever, it will most certainly spread to them, and it'll just spread across an allotment field in next to no time. As I say, I noticed one or two of my onions one evening, and I spotted exactly what it was. I knew it was onion blight. I took those onions out. I came up the following night to check on the rest, and the rest were covered. So it literally within 48 hours, it went across 580 onions and took the lot. So I had no other choice but to pull the lot out. So so those are the problems with onions. But having said that, I've grown onions for many years. I always grow my onions as sets, and I always grow my leeks as seed and spring onion as seed and stuff like that. So I've never really had a problem with with onions at all. The one problem that you do need to look out for is bolting. Now, bolting is when a plant runs to seed, and as I explained, onions are, or the alliums are biannual, which means they grow for 2 years. So when you've got a set, it's already 1 year old, if you like. So when you put that into the ground, it's in its last year. So you only need to either check it, i.e. it runs dry, or you get a cold snap in the weather, which you can't really help. But if you have a cold snap in the weather and then it warms up again, the onion will think it's then into potentially its 3rd year, and it will run to seed. It'll send up a shoot up the middle, and then you get this big pom-pom flower at the top. As soon as that happens, the only thing you can do is pull the onion out and eat it. As I say, it's perfectly edible to eat and everything, but as soon as it starts to run to seed, the actual bulb itself, which is the bit that you're eating, will just shrivel away effectively, and all of that energy that's in there, all that goodness, will basically go to make this one stalk with the seed on the top. So that, unfortunately, is the one thing that you need to look out for. Always make sure that your onions don't run too dry. They can run dry, but you don't want to, they don't want to be dry for too long. And temperature, which we can't really control too much, but what you want to make sure is you plant them early enough so that they get a good season before it starts to go cold, because that's when they'll bolt, basically. So that's the best tips I can give you on onions and alliums and things like that. As I say, they are very beautiful plants. Many of them are grown for the actual flowers. So if you look if you search on the internet for allium, by far the majority of what you'll see are plants that are grown for the flowers, and you typically have sort of stalks which are 1 metre or more high with this big pom-pom flower on the top, and they are very ornamental, and they are really nice in borders, because if you've got reasonably low plants, these things will throw up these big stalks in the middle with these big pom-pom flowers on the top, which look really nice. Typically purple, white, pink, but they are mostly purple. And all of the alliums have these attractive flowers. There is the odd one that's yellow, but by and far the majority of them are kind of pom-pom shaped and purple. Now, alliums have quite a few, apart from the health benefits. Obviously, I have explained in the past that alliums are also very useful for other things. Garlic, for example, is really, really good as an insecticide. You can, if you get garlic and crush it, put it in get a few garlic cloves and sort of crush them up, put some warm water in there and make what effectively like a garlic tea, and then put that into a spraying gun. What you might need to do is put it through some muslin cloth or a bit of net to get the lumps out so it doesn't block anything up. But basically what you're looking for is the oil out of the garlic. And then you put that in a sprayer and then spray that on anything like aphids or any insect, pretty much, ants or sort of anything like that, beetles and things like that. Not that you want to kill beetles, but ants you might want to, aphids you most certainly want to, and also things like slugs and snails. The gastropod family of animals, slugs, snails, and things like that. It basically kills them, and it's an organic way of basically doing it. So the way that it works are things like aphids and insects and that they don't breathe with their mouths like we do. They only sort of use their mouth for eating. They actually breathe through their body, and what the garlic does is the oils out of the garlic coat the coat the aphid or the insect or whatever, and effectively stop it from breathing. So it is a really sort of really good organic way. So if you've got some crops like runner beans or climbing beans, string beans, things like that, that can get absolutely devastated with black fly or green fly, just by mixing up a bit of garlic with some hot water, let it cool down a little bit, sift it out, and then spray that on. You'll kill all of the aphids on there dead. You'll probably need to repeat it again, maybe in 4 or 5 days' time, so you get all the eggs as well. So it won't kill the eggs; it'll only kill the adult aphids. But you can to save using any nasty chemicals or pesticides, just a bit of garlic will most certainly wipe out aphids or anything like that. And it takes around it can take up to a month or so for the taste of the garlic to leave the plant. So if you've got whitefly or something like that on your strawberries, or potentially or black fly or that on your raspberries, you may not particularly want to spray those with garlic if you're going to crop them within a month or so. So think about, I mean, I don't know, you might like strawberries with garlic, I don't know, but it does, the only sort of the only downside of it is it can leave this garlicky tinge in the taste of whatever you sprayed on, because that'll sort of absorb into the into the beans or whatever. I mean, if you're talking about vegetables like beans or peas or something like that, it doesn't really matter if it tastes slightly of garlic. But things like strawberries or raspberries or fruit, basically, you need to think again. And this same oil is really good for you. The other tip that I can give you with garlic is, if you are making anything with garlic, if you're cooking or whatever, you'll get the oil, as you crush the garlic to get the flavour, you'll get the oil on your hands. So if you're chopping it up or crushing it or whatever, you'll get garlic oil on your hands, and then your hands smell of garlic. Best way of getting it off is with cold water, not hot water, cold water, a bit of soap, and wash your hands, and the garlic smell will go straight away. If you use hot water, the pores on your skin will open and the oil will go inside, and then your hands will smell of garlic for a few hours at least, or a day or so. So if you ever get garlic on your hands, wash with cold water, with soap and cold water, and then the garlic flavour will go away. But onions are really easy to grow. All of the Allium family really are quite easy. As I say, there's only really 2 methods of growing. And one, you put seeds in a tray, or basically, if you get your onion seeds, or your leek seeds or your spring onion seeds or whatever, if you plant them into a reasonable sized pot, sprinkle them on the top, literally just under the surface, and then let them grow like grass effectively. Wait till they get to kind of something like 3 or 4 inches high, and then prick them out, and then plant them individually into cells. Let them grow a little bit longer there, and then plant them out, as I say, in May, basically just after April, start of May, so you avoid the allium leaf miner, and then let them grow away, and away you go. There are other alliums out there like chives, which basically you establish a bunch of chives, like a like a bunch of chives in the ground, and then that little patch will basically grow every year. So you don't need to keep putting the seeds in there; they'll just keep growing. With onions and all of it, you can eat any part of it. You can eat the roots, you can eat the stem, the leaves, the flowers. All of it is edible, and it's all very good for you. So with chives, don't think you can't eat the flowers. The flowers are very pretty. You can put them on your plate. You can eat them as well, just like you eat the chives as well. So you can eat every part of an allium. And as I say, they are really good for you. They clean your blood out, and they're really easy to grow. So apart from the seed, the other way is obviously the sets, and all you do with these is basically nice fertile ground, well draining ground. With any allium, you don't want it sitting in water because it'll rot off. So you want reasonably well draining soil with plenty of nutrition in there. And again, all you do is, rather than push the onion in, make a hole with your finger by pulling the dirt back, pulling the soil back, and then drop that in the oil, because you don't want a compressed lump of soil at the bottom. You want that to be nice and loose, so the onion will go in and set its roots. So nice loose soil, put your finger in the ground and pull back the soil, drop the onion set in, roots down obviously, and then put that back. And you want to want it so that the surface of the ground will be about there, so just above it. The one thing to avoid is having the top of the onion sitting out of the ground, because birds think the worms and birds will pull these out for you. So always plant it so it's completely in the ground. If you have got a longer stalk or anything like that, there's nothing wrong with you just pulling that off or just chop it off with the scissors. But always make sure that they're actually under the ground, about that far under the ground. And as I say, roots down, and then keep the ground as loose as it possibly can do. Then as the ground settles and the roots go in, basically the level of the ground will go down as it settles, and then the onion will then come up to the top like that, and then the onion will be on the top of the ground and not in a bowl, because then that can attract the water, which will then rock the ground. So always make sure you've freshly dug the ground, plant the onions just below it, and then as the ground settles, the onion will basically come to the top again, and then it'll be on the top of the surface of the soil, so there won't be any water gathering around the bottom of it. Keep them reasonably well watered. You don't need to water them every day, but if you do have a dry or hot spell, you know, just give them, wait till the sun starts to go down at night. That's the best time to water them, and just give them a bit of water. You don't need to drown them. A bit of water, and just keep them happy, and you'll have some nice big onions. And if you look later this year, every year I always tie them up in strings like the French do with garlic and onions and stuff. If you look back at my other videos, you'll see me stringing them up, and I normally get I don't know, about 20 or so onions in a string. It's quite easy to do, but if you look later on this year or from last year or the year before, you'll see me stringing them up, which is the best way to store them in your allotment. Okay, so these are the chives just coming up now, as you can see. They're just starting to sort of come through. So we're just at the beginning of February now, and you can just about see they're about sort of 4 to 5 inches now. These obviously come every year, and there's little kind of bulbs under the ground here. As you can see, these are the ones that got planted here last year, and these were grown from, or at least the majority of these were grown from seed 3 years ago, and every year they come back and fill these pots full of chives for me. So I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode.